the German pronunciation, sorry. Yeah, okay, so he's our master of ceremonies. He is going to introduce the panel, and then we're going to go from there, okay?
Thank you, Robin. Let me go ahead and get this turned on. Hear me here?
It's on.
Okay, good. Excellent. Is it? I don't think it is. There we go. There we go. Thank you, Robin. This should be working. Good. So yes, I'm Harvey Nuz, very glad to be here today. And I am from Houston, and I am in privacy. As Robin has said, I also have been fortunate to be up in Dallas a few times, helping out a couple of companies on projects here and in Keller, and just look forward to being with all of you today. So let me just first mention that when we do have questions from the audience here, please stand, state your name, and the company you're with, and then your question. You're laughing there. And, and I'll go ahead and repeat that. And for those of you watching via the internet, do put in your questions on the chat, and Robin is going to endeavor to address those soon. So let me go ahead and just say that the title of this, it's an excellent one. I've been talking with some of the panel members. It's Revolutionizing Digital Humans for Seamless Customer Delivery and Organizational Value. So I want to introduce Mike Santimaw, SVP CIO of Rent-A-Center. Mike?
Thank you, sir. Extremely excited to be here today. Have an incredible panel, and like the title says, it's about digital humans and how we think about that seamless customer journey, the overall organizational value. And if any of you read the passage that's online about this, it leads into a whole variety of different areas. How do these digital experiences drive empathy, compassion, responsiveness outside of just the overall automation type things that we think of as CIOs. So very, very rich topic this morning. So and in these times, we definitely rely more and more on these digital communication channels, automation as a whole, just the autonomous actions we're all real hungry for us, and gaining the efficiencies, saving costs. The list goes on and on. And as these technologies continue to evolve, the story just gets greater and greater, and there's tons of different lessons along the ways, different approaches. There's so many things, and very fortunate this morning to sit with this panel and talk about some of that and really feed off of you as well. We talked about this being a very interactive session. We mean that. We're going to pick on Aaron a lot, but outside of that, we expect participation from a lot of folks in this room and online as well. So please feel free to share and participate. And again, my name is Mike Santimaw, CIO of Rent-A-Center. We're in a really fortunate spot because we span across, a bunch of different channels, online, brick and mortar, one of the few that still think brick and mortar is an extreme value for a variety of reasons. And we leverage a lot of these technologies along all of that. So again, excited to be part of this, and I'll hand it over to everyone's favorite human, Rusty Kennington, to introduce himself.
Yeah. Check 1, 2. Can you guys hear me? All right. I've not been known to be quiet. Rusty Kennington, CIO of the Henry Company. And Henry Company is, we're in the building construction industry, all the stuff you don't see when the product's done. So we control air, water, and vapor and energy from below the foundation to the roof. And so, as Mike said, excited to be here. Great topic, huge title for the session, but I think we'll make our way through this. Neelu?
Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Neelu Sethi. I'm the Senior Vice President and CIO of ReddyIT. As the name suggests, outstanding. That's right. Everyone paying attention, right? No falling asleep this morning, right? That's the way it goes. So, Senior Vice President and CIO at ReddyIT. Yes, we do freeze water. You probably see ice everywhere you go, Walmart, racetrack, and whatnot. So you think of, you see ice, you think of ReddyIT. We are the #1 in the ice industry. We have spread our wings across 150 plus locations across the nation. Very proud of everything we do. Happy to talk about this topic. Who would have thought I would be talking about human digital when we are freezing water? But there is a heavy robotics component in every manufacturing location that we run. So a lot to talk about today. Excited to be here.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Good.
Is it on?
Mic number 3.
Is it on? Green light?
Keep it pressed.
Hello. No, not yet. Hello.
We're not good at this part, but we're really good at digital humans.
So this one works. Yeah. I don't know why I'm up here, to be honest, but I'm gonna try to hang with these guys. These are rock stars. So Bryan Tutor, formerly with Elbit Systems of America, Vice President and CIO. So I'm transitioning, but a very cool company that I had an opportunity to work with Homeland Security, defense systems, commercial aviation, and medical systems as well. So anyway, it's good to be here with these folks. What a title. I mean, I don't know what your expectations are this morning, so we're going to look for you to kind of throw some things out as well to help us form this topic. But anyway, I'll turn it over to John and we'll keep going.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. I am John Henthorne, and I am the Senior Vice President and CIO for DeGolyer and McNaughton. So DeGolyer and McNaughton, we're a global oil and gas consulting company, headquarters here in Dallas, and we've got offices around the globe. We provide lots of oil and gas technical consulting services. And like I said, I'm really also looking forward to it. Even in our pre-meeting, it was fun. It's interesting to see how each company is applying similar technologies to different sort of problems, and you can learn from each other. So it should be a good discussion. Back to Mike.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and when we think about that digital human, I kind of hate saying digital human, to be honest with you. Apparently, so does the microphone. But, it means so much to so many. So, I mean, if we can kick off with just that, Rusty, if you don't mind, what does the digital human mean to you and your organization?
You ready to try it?
Check.
All right, so great question. There's probably as many definitions as there are people in this room. A couple of ways I look at it. Mike mentioned it when he kicked us off. We've all been involved in systems and automation and things like that, and there's a growing need, I think, to really provide not just artificial intelligence, which has been going on for decades, but really empathy and some of these other kinds of things too. So there's an opportunity for us to really look differently at technology and where we may apply it. So I think that's one kind of end of the spectrum. And the other end might be, how do humans and technology work together? And we've heard about, artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence and things like this. So maybe the other end of the spectrum might be more human-centered with kind of technology and how we augment and improve what humans tend to do in our companies. So I think, like I said, a lot of definitions, but those are two ends of the spectrum that I see.
Interesting, Rusty. So if I were to go ask one of my business leader and said, what does human digital mean to you? They would immediately say K to D2. I'm telling you, K to D2. That's what they're going to say. So yes, when you think about human digital, right, walking, talking robot comes to mind, right? But it's much more than that. So human digital to me is just one more skill set, but something that's visible behind the scene, or invisible behind the scene, or visible behind the scene, however you want to say it. In Reddy, we have two types of workforce, blue-collar, very service-oriented workforce, right? Everyone who is delivering eyes, driving our trucks, making sure they are over-obsessed for our customers, right? That's where the rubber meets the road for us. And then the other workforce is all about, at our headquarters, very much of a white-collared knowledge worker. But quite frankly, digital human traverses between both. currently we are talking about, we all are seeing tons and tons of bots coming up, RPAs and whatnot, that really covers anything which is repetitive or more so something you can document, something you can repeat over and over again, and you can establish a blue-collar service worker that digital human can take space of. But then we are overlaying with so much of artificial intelligence that's coming in and turning that blue-collared and combining it with white-collared, knowledge worker, and there is a cognitive intelligence that's coming in. So it's a combination of both, quite frankly, in a very unique way, without a unique belly button, but is someone who is extending the capability of our organization, right? And taking us to that excellence that we want to drive to, taking us through that proficiency we want to drive to, taking us through that compliance we want to drive to, right? All those components start to come in through this another job description, so to speak. So another skill set with a different job description, but just invisible skill set, but becoming very prominent in the organization.
I can't top that one, but the way I looked at it was how you monopolize data to take human performance to the next level. So, as Neelu was saying, data exists in all forms, and the way that you use it, if you're smart, and where I was at, we had data scientists that would go in, and that's all they did was, understand the data, and then we would apply it to the human function to help take things to the next level in the business. And every business is always looking for, how do you move the performance to the next level? How do you move the index and improve the bottom line? So I think that's the challenge. And again, we really want to open it up to hear you guys at some point to kind of throw out some thoughts on a different view of how you might look at it as well. John?
Good. It's good and bad going last. So I think for us, when we start thinking about this topic and what does it mean to us, from a technology perspective, we think about, AI, machine learning, and a lot of what we just call advanced statistical analysis. We do a lot of just statistical and modeling work. And, how can you apply that to our business and really drive value? And where we've started and where our journey has started and where we're having a lot of success has been in this area of we do a lot of engineering work, technical consulting work, and we're using these technologies to help us focus on working on the most important, highest value work. And so we're using our historical knowledge, we're using a lot of these tools to point us in the direction of this is where you should be spending time on this particular client job. And then secondly, we're using the tools to create space and time for our folks. That we're taking out as much time as we can out of some of the more mundane or kind of blocking and tackling aspects of our work and shifting it to where our engineers and technical staff are really doing high-end engineering work, which they really like, we really like, and ultimately you get a better product. So using it to help us find where to spend the most of our time, and then secondly, create space for us.
That's great.
I have a question. So talk to me about analytics. Talk to me about the value and how much you trust it and whether you trust it and why.
I'm sorry, ma'am, would you state your name? Would you state the company you're with?
Well played, Harvey. Well played.
But I'd like to know a lot more about how you can measure or how you can actually make really good decisions and what kind of information you are collecting.
I'll take a quick stab.
Yeah.
So I think John kind of said it best. When we're taking the mundane tasks out of the hands of the smart people, and I don't mean that derogatorily, but when we're talking about engineers and high-end, high-tech folks that we really want them to use their brains and apply it to creating innovation and value for the business, how do you take, as I said, the mundane tasks out of their hands and turn it over to a computer and use machine learning or AI wherever that makes sense? So I think the value, Robin, is how you're effectively engaging your employees, and are they doing the tasks in a meaningful and valuable way? So that's the way I would look at it.
Very well said. So if I add on to, one of the thought that crosses everyone's mind is always, look, is there a value, or are we taking away the jobs, or are we, causing or creating more problem, right? That's always the question that keeps coming up. Quite frankly, digital human, if done right, and if that strategy is done right, is a very strategic element for the organization. It can, we all talked about, or continue to talk about, the talent crunch we have, right? You can actually move the talent that you got to more and more strategic roles and continue to substitute the repetitive, the mundane, the things that can be done by the bots, and move them over, and you can drive much better compliance, you can drive much better efficiencies, you can drive much better or a much lesser error rate, right? So there are so many components and much faster. However, that belly buttons that exist and who understand the business and have that business acumen, and if you move them to the strategic role, all of a sudden you're doing more with less. And that's what is the value-driven proposition that continue to come. But it starts with, quite frankly, thinking differently and educating everyone around you differently, right? It starts with winning the hearts and the minds first, helping people understand the value proposition, and then making that shift. And, so I know many of us jump into, Rob, into your question, which is a phenomenal question, by the way, what's the value proposition? We jump into that. But if we take a step back and understand and take a big picture and holistic view, phenomenal strategic value proposition. We just have to use the right terms. We have to educate the right people all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. What we do, a big mistake, we only talk at the top. We do not educate to the every level within the organization, right? Helping them understand what it means, why it's needed, and how it will enable them versus impact them. So changing the vocabulary changes the value proposition in my mind.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that. I think, and you're right, change management is where change happens in the trenches. We all know that. It doesn't make it easy, though. I'll give a specific example to Robin's question about analytics that we used. This was at my last company. Aaron Rundle was there. And we were a B2B supplier of mattresses. And we actually developed more knowledge of the mattress buying consumer than any of the retailers out there. And we were able to really not only add additional value to these retailers, we would show them, we knew where they were physically, geographically, we knew where they were online. And we could consult and provide this as consulting advice to some of our retailers and overlay, hey, here's where the people that buy your products in these price points, here's where they live, and here's where your stores are, and here's where they're not. And so we were able to really just skyrocket our value as a retailer and get out of the commodity business and move into real value and consultative selling. So much so that we went online ourselves. And so, I think the opportunity we have to be ready for, usually we're planning for transformation, but sometimes it kind of comes at you from the side, and part of our job is to really be ready for it, do the change management that Neelu talked about, but I think there's huge opportunity in changing how a company uses information. We started using it proactively, which really kind of comes after reactively, looking at what happened the last 30 days or those kinds of things, but that's not where the goal is. The goal is really changing the conversation to be forward-looking, right, and help be transformative for what you do as a company.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You think about just the power behind data-driven everything, and making great decisions around all that. It's incredibly powerful. And as I think through our discussion the other day, and all the things that were said this morning, I can't help but wonder how that really ties into that self-service journey that we talked about. So self-service in the respect that we have all these great things on the ground to drive that digital experience, through automation or what have you, but it's a lot of folks think it's more of a technologist journey, so I need to go to IT. We talked about a center of excellence this morning and how we can be more powerful if we're enabling the business to just work within those tools and use data to deliver that next generation experience, whatever it may be. So I'd love to pass it down the other end of the table and put you on the spot to get your views on how that can be really powerful for an organization, that self-serve component.
Yeah, so I think there's lots of different self-serve, from a self-service perspective, all the way towards, individuals can do everything themselves, to, you can have the other end of the spectrum is everything has to go through some sort of control point. And I think for me, like my experience, it really, in all technologies, all aspects of business, the success I've always seen comes through partnership. And so I think that what we're seeing is that in our use cases where we've had success, is really bringing together the right people together. And it's been less for us about self-service. It's been more around bringing the engineer, bringing the data scientists, bringing the technical staff together, and really kind of, getting really clear on what the use case is we're trying to solve so we know what we're trying to do. But it's been more, for at least up until now, for us it's heavily about getting the right people together, clear on what we're doing, and pulling together. Much more so far for us than self-service. It's been more around getting the right knowledge, everybody bringing their skills to the table, and it's been really complementary, each person what they're bringing. So that's kind of where we are right now on that topic.
Yeah, we're a bit of a blend at the moment. We were talking this morning about the different tools, the different environments we have to drive automation, drive those digital experiences. But for us, it's we're aspiring to be to that self-service model, and you're absolutely right. It takes a bit of an engineering effort to say, hey, this is truly what these environments are and how they can be exposed in more of a self-service way. So, yeah, I mean, I'm looking for questions from the audience too. I'm pulling you a little bit. I know I got one of our key automators in the back over there as well. But yeah, I think that's the way of the future. As they think about building efficiencies and saving costs across at least our business, we're exposing them to those tools, and we're seeing light bulbs go off. Wow, what if I did that? Well, try it out, experiment. Testing experimentation is a huge part of this. So testing experimentation at the business level is a bit of the holy grail, if you will.
Mike, could I ask a question, if I may? A couple of questions, actually.
Sure.
So one is for the analytics and sharing with other partners, you're going to have to build in privacy, I believe. And then the second question is, I love Neelu's thought about the job description. So that means you're going to have a performance review of this newest workforce member, which means training the algorithms. Anyone want to take off on those?
Let me touch upon the second one, and then I'll let my panelists handle the first one. Yes, you have to have a performance review, right? Just like anything else, results matter. Everything else is a conversation, right? It applies here as well. So it's a job description. It's a very, and it's not just one bot, right? How many bots, double-digit, three-digit bots that now we are beginning to run in the organization. You have to measure the outcome and leverage those outcomes to continue to drive a winning story for the organization. To continue to not only drive winning story, but also eliminate the fear that may be out there, right? People do fear bots. People do fear the digital human concept. And as a result, there could be a lot of roadblocks that could get created in the organization if you don't use that winning story and bring the results and demonstrate that how those results are changing the game for the organization, but also changing the game for the talent that's in the organization, right? So in my example, every manufacturing facility is completely robotized for us. Moving ice from the conveyor belt to the pallets, and pallets are completely created by the robots and moving it to the trucks. We are running our manufacturing facilities with a very, very lean staff. And it's working flawlessly for us, right? So as a result, our product gets out of the door much faster than it could in past. So we have eliminated or reduced the error rate that used to be there. And the second component, which is a big winning story for us, out of 160 or 50 facilities, every day our routing or routes have to travel out of, right? At 4 in the morning, our trucks are filling up ice, and they're leaving our facilities and getting to the 75,000 customers and making sure ice gets there on time and We do have a perishable product and it disappears faster than you want, so you want to do it in a very efficient manner. All the routes are generated by the bots today. That's a heartbeat of my organization, as you can imagine. And that's been done flawlessly by the bots. Now, we didn't get there on day one, right? So just like a job description and the performance review, we outlined the job description and continue to look at where is the continuous improvement opportunity, continue to look at what is the performance review of this bot, where are we failing, why are we failing, get to the root cause of it and course correct it. And today, as of last night, I had one failure out of 160 locations. And that's amazing, right? So it used to take us 8 to 9 hours to build all those routes for all these locations, and now we finish it in an hour and a half. So imagine the level of efficiency, imagine the level of productivity we are driving, imagine the level of operational excellence we are driving, and imagine the level of elimination of the errors that have come in. And now that data becomes powerful. And now we are running analytics on that data, which we never had the ability to run. So all of a sudden, the power that has been generated in the organization, and on top of that, our routing team who had the solid business acumen, we have moved them to the roles that we were not able to do that work earlier, and now all of a sudden they are doing more strategic roles than they ever were. So this winning story is so powerful, but if we don't talk about this, right, the fear will continue. So it's on to us, right? Every leader in the organization needs to understand the human digital. Every leader of the organization, not just CIOs. CIOs we have to put on that technical cape and be that storyteller, right? We got to educate others, not using the technical terms, but using the winning stories, right? And be able to say, look, we messed up. This is where we messed up. I'll tell you when I have messed up, you know. I have messed up when I tried to create automation on a broken process. I didn't know that. I didn't know. No process is labeled with saying, I'm broken, you know, that doesn't happen. So we learned much after the fact and realized that there were so many ifs and buts in that process that we couldn't document, and we failed. Right? So be able to raise your hand and say, wait a second, this is what bad looks like and this is what good looks like. We want to stay away from the bad and shift the organization towards the good. And the storytelling is so powerful. And that's what we all need to master in. You know, so hopefully that answers your second question. I'll let the others handle your first question.
Yeah, I was actually about to comment a little differently, but I want to pick up on the last part about the process. So, and it even ties a little to Robin's question around the analytics. And you know, when we started our journey, it was under this umbrella of a big data program, and a big part of that was putting our arms around all of our data, which led to new common processes. So it led to a lot of change. And to be honest, it really wasn't that sexy. I mean, it's something that had to be done. You have to do it. But when you start layering any sort of analytics, any sort of advanced tools, you have to have trust in the underlying layer. And so you have to, in almost all cases, is going to lead to process change, which leads to tool change, which leads to data change. And it's, like I said, it's in some ways it's kind of a grinding it out sort of piece, but it's foundational piece. For us, now that you're never really done there, but we've kind of have come over the hardest part of that journey, and now you get into this. How do you continue to grow? How do you continue to market? How do you continue to identify opportunities? And I think it ties to the part of the question is that we use two things. One is you have to measure what you do. So metrics is key. So whatever it is, you have to be able to measure in ways that are easy to understand. You know, how does it compare to where we were? You'd be able to demonstrate the value. You don't need lots of metrics, but you need metrics that are easy to understand. And then secondly, you know, as part of our journey of really trying to identify additional areas to drive value, you got the metrics, and then the best is putting passionate people who have been part of the early use cases in front of other people. So you got the metrics with the facts, but there's nothing more powerful than an engineer standing up in front of his or her peers and talking about a recent use case we put in place and how they're doing their job differently, how they're working differently, to lead to more and more potential opportunities as you go forward. So, and some people really highlight on the metrics, others it's really more listening to the passion that comes through people when they're really excited about things.
Excellent. Thank you, Neelu. Thank you, John. We got a question back here, but before we go to that, let me see if there's a quick answer to the privacy question. And if there isn't, we will go on to his question.
I'm happy to take a quick shot at it.
Perfect.
These guys are way more qualified than I am, but I'll take a shot at it. So when I think about privacy, I'm going to lump cyber and privacy all in one bubble. I think it's about making it inherent or invisible to everything you do. You know, when you're trying to wear multiple hats in this journey, from my perspective, you're worried about too much, right? And when I think about that self-service journey, if you're worried about too much, you're going to fail, right? So if you have, you know, automated security and privacy controls all built into what you do, I'm thinking about the folks in the room and the help that they provided to our organization around just automation as a whole. It's inherently built in. So they're just thinking about what are the business outcomes they're looking for. They're driving that self-service model and just saying, okay, I need it to do this, and we have everything behind the scenes protecting the organization. That's the way I think about it.
I'll take a quick shot at it, maybe from a little bit different angle. So with our company, cybersecurity is like very critical. And I don't know if you're familiar with the cybersecurity maturity model certification process, but if you're in an aerospace and defense company and you handle controlled unclassified information, you've got to manage that through your entire value stream. So all companies that are going to do business with the DoD that handle that type of information have to be certified at least to a level 3, which is 130 different controls that you can't bypass. And you do it or you don't do it. And if you aren't doing it correctly, like I said, your penalty is you don't get business with the DoD. If you do it correctly, then you have a whole lot of opportunity to do business. And companies, and the one I was with, we were aggressively getting to that point. They're there now, and so they're able to do whatever they need to do. But it's not only the prime company, it's all the way through the value chain. So as you're talking, level 3, 4, and 5 suppliers that may not be as sophisticated as, a level 1 or tier 1 or tier 2, you've got to figure out ways to get them to that certified level to protect the data ultimately. And so the penalty, like I said, in the business is if you can't protect your customers' data, they won't trust you and they won't come back to you. So with all of it, the human element, and as we get into more and more self-server type stuff, so you got to protect the business from the people as well. So when you've got insider threat type things and you're looking for data exfiltration and where is my data going, we kind of used this example the other day. If Rusty's all of a sudden downloading 10 gigabits of data when his typical download is 1 meg or something, there's probably a problem there. Yeah. So using all of the artificial intelligence, machine learning, the high-tech technology that you guys know more about it than I do probably is how do you protect yourself from your own people as well? So.
Excellent. Thank you, Bryan. As I move back here to let the gentleman speak into the mic, I'll just remind people that we're probably moving toward a privacy operations center, including a security operations center. Your name, sir?
My name is Venkatesan Pillai. I go with VP. Could you please talk about the risk? The technology comes with the risk, right? How do we handle the risk, especially in the bot? When you talk about leading bot vendor, I had an opportunity to do an assessment from a cyber security perspective. It doesn't have a lot of security control inbuilt into that. It's basically security has to be bolted on most of the time, especially talking about privileged access management, where how do you change the credential and what are the impact? Because once you put a bot into the process, that everything has been automated, right? If the bot has been attacker got into the bot, he can use those as a powerful weapon across your organization. Like earlier, if you don't do a technology automation, it's very difficult for me to pivot into the network. Now it's a bot, and I can use that existing bot and get into the spread. It is exponent way the spreading the malware and other stuff. That one, number one. Number two, could you please talk? How do you basically the first question itself? What are the highest risks that you have seen within your experience, and how do we handle it? That number one. Number two is how do you do a integration between legacy technology, and we have a different technology component within the network, right? We have a legacy and then modern technology. Sometimes that integration did not work well. What are those challenges, and comparing with the TCO and return on investment perspective? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with stealing the bot's identity, or do you want to start with the other one?
Yeah, I'm thinking like, and that question was like this long. I hope I remember it all.
That was a loaded,
I already forgot the first part.
loaded question.
I'm gonna lump the first one into just risk. Essentially, is what you're asking. How do you protect the organization from a risk perspective? And I start a little bit of what I was talking about before, making those controls invisible and being inherent to the infrastructure or whatever environment you're talking about. So there's a bit of that. But as I think about the development of bots, whether that's on the business side or with the within the technology team, there's also this validation layer that says, hey, this is a good configuration that doesn't put the organization at risk. Leveraging things like data classification as an example of, hey, you're allowed to have access to this, as we were talking about a few minutes ago. Yes, you're allowed to execute this in this way. Access, there's a bit of separation in our world, and it's a pretty complex problem that you referenced. So how do I give the access to the bot, at least what I think I read in your question is, how do I give access to that bot so they can do anything and everything they need to, but still not expose the organization? So a little bit of layered access in there allows us to be successful on that front. I mean, you think about things like SOD and how complicated that can get with different systems, especially if you're touching anything that's a financial system. Of course, you've got limited things you should do there from an automation perspective, but still another powerful use case of how you can really get some scale and some costs out of the organization when you're thinking about batching some of those jobs, what have you. So, I mean, that's the way I think about from protecting the organization from a risk perspective. I don't know if anyone else has anything. I know you've got some strong feelings on this topic. Did I hit all the good stuff?
No, I think you hit it pretty well, but it's something that came to mind, and I think Neelu was talking about roles and access management. One thing that organizations always get bit by is people change jobs in their, where they did have access to certain types of data before, to your point on segregations of duty, you can't have access to it now. So typically when you're getting audited by some external firm, that's one of the first things they're going to point out to you is, Neelu changed jobs 6 months ago and you never took away or changed your access control. So again, I think that's another way you got to protect yourselves from your own people and from yourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, Venkat, to your point, yes, do we need to give privilege access to bot to run all of this component, right? So go back to my previous definition of human digital. It's another job description. And who is our weakest link when it comes to cybersecurity? People, right? This is another persona in the organization, so you got to protect it, just like people component of it. So just like anything else, the watch outs here is make sure there is a solid focus on architecture, make sure there is a solid focus on cybersecurity, make sure, as a CIO, CISO is my best friend when it comes to bots, right? Having cool and bling effect is not my best friend. You got to stay away from, there are a lot of dialogues that happen around bots, whether AI, machine learning, RPA, whatever, right? We go into, this is cool, this sounds awesome, right? You can't stop there. You got to have the right architecture. You got to have the right center of excellence that has to be built out so that you can scale this. Cool factor is no good, right? And the second watch out here is, we know that there are a lot of partners, vendors who are constantly tapping on our business leaders' shoulders and saying, look what I got, how I can solve your problem. And when shadow IT starts to happen and it's not structured right, and it is not integrated right, that's where the disasters start to happen. So our responsibility as the leaders of the organization goes beyond just only looking at the security component of it, right? We got to make sure that there are no shadow IT component that's going to cause a risk to the organization. And protect this exactly like any other asset you would protect. Protect this just like any other human element that causes, creates a weakest link in the organization, right? So yes, when we start creating all these pilots and proof of concepts and we are playing with it, That's what end users are seeing. But behind the scene, I am solid focus on center of excellence. I'm solid focus on security. I'm solid focus on making sure that our architecture is set for scalability and is set with the cybersecurity in mind, right? Because I have to give those privileged access. Majority of my bots, like I talked about routing, that's the heartbeat of my organization, right? Manufacturing is the heartbeat of my organization. You just can't do this as a cool factor, right? Those days are gone. Those days used to perhaps exist 5 years ago. So you've got to do this right. So while I'm talking about the winning stories and the not so winning stories and the failures, behind the scene I have a team who is focused, and they have their job description talks about how do you protect, including bot. My bots are talking to the core ERP. We know that, right? It's talking to every part of my data, which means it needs to be double protected. It goes without saying. That's table stakes in my mind.
Yeah, let me follow up with, maybe the moral of this part of the story is automation doesn't just make work go away, right? It changes the nature of what we do. We've heard about the job description and the review, and I think like any system we put in, we've got to anticipate what benefits we're going to get, what things we're going to measure, and then we've got to measure them. So we know we've got to do that. We've got to also understand that it's not fire and forget. These are systems that are touching the ERP, routing trucks, dealing with customers, whatever they are. It changes the nature of our work, but it doesn't just go away. And I think that we've got security concerns that we've really got to be on top of. And we also have a business that is in an economy that changes and forces changes on this business. And so, like every other process, we've got to understand what situations might make this process brittle or broken, since they don't have a label that tells you when it's broken. And I think so we've got to stay out in front of that, and I've got skeletons in my closet where a great business process looked good, big program, and I didn't anticipate a change in our business that made that process no longer valid. And so it's really, it puts a bigger onus on us because the bot's not going to come and tell you. So when these things are less visible, if we don't have the right metrics in place to make sure we're monitoring and measuring what we expect as outcomes. You heard earlier, we got to speak the language. This is not bits and bytes and all that. It's the measures that we take need to be business measures, and they can be. Otherwise, we shouldn't be doing it. And so I think that's what I look at, summing up what I'm hearing, that's kind of the advice I would share. Question?
I think that, go ahead.
So, Ron Day with Rapid7. So as we are discussing automation, I'm hearing a theme. There's really three pillars I would categorize it as. We have technology, we have people, and I would argue both of which can contribute to having the right process in place. So there's balancing act there. I'd love to hear your take on how you approach balancing those three pillars to have relevance.
Tell us what those three pillars are again. People, process, and technology, which we've always heard about. Excellent. How would you balance that? And did you want to follow on to the previous question first, John?
I was thinking actually, I'll try to address that too, maybe a little bit to the second question, which included legacy, kind of the fact that we have a legacy environment and how do you address that. We all have legacy environment. We'll always have legacy environment. We've taken an approach, it's very much a data-centric approach. So really concentrated, I talked a little bit earlier, around pulling our data from the legacy systems into more of a data lake type environment to where, which drives a lot of things. It drives you to think about how are you going to connect the dots between the data you have in these legacy systems. But once you have that in place, you can really leverage a lot of the new technologies, our new development, which is our first foray into the cloud. We're much more cloud-oriented, new tools. So it allows you to kind of separate the data out of some of those legacy systems is kind of how we've addressed that. And in the people process technology, the process piece was probably more key than we kind of talk about. But to get the common data, it did require common work processes across the company. And that's really where a lot of the change part of it comes into play, which comes back to the people side. Let you go.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
I'll do a quick one. So I think you kind of led the answer too, the people, process, and technology. I think if it's not balanced, that you're paying attention to all three areas at the same time, then if you think of it like as a ball that's got three axes, and if it's not balanced, it's going to wobble. So I think, making sure that you're balanced across all three areas, that's what's worked for me in my career. So good question.
That's interesting. So the way I look at this is technology comes after the fact, right? So technology should not be leading any of this back, right? How many of us in our times have said, oh, this is cool technology, let's bring this in, and we are looking for a nail with the hammer, right? So that's what we're doing. That's never ever do that. Quite frankly, I look at this as a triangle where people part is number one, process is the center, and technology is the foundation, right? And why I put people on the top, always think about the experience you want to generate out of it, right? So start with the customer experience, and if you are over obsessed about customers, you will do it right. You're thinking about people, you're winning their hearts, which means start with the experience. Second part of people, start with the enablement. Don't talk about technology, don't talk about process. Start with the experience, talk about the enablement, and talk about the value proposition, how these talent groups can be moved into what value that they can bring to the organization. When you get that part right, then the process will start to come out. People will open up. They will share with you the things that are in their head because you started from winning their heart first. So people is the first component of anything you do. It applies everywhere, quite frankly, not just in automation. And then the process, you start getting it right. Challenge, why is it a 100-step process, right? We are all, I have done lean for 20 years now. Really, it needs to be a 100-step process. So then when you have started winning and coming in from the experience, bring that 100-step process down to 5 or 10, whatever is relevant, and then bring technology to automate it. That's the path that I understand, right? Yes, we talk about people, process, technology in almost everything, but look around the organizations who are winning. They are winning because of the experience. Amazon is winning with you because of the experience that Amazon has given you. But if they had brought the bot in front of you with a terrible experience, you think you would be clicking on that Amazon or the Uber or the DoorDash app? Absolutely not. It starts with the experience, and then everything else falls in perspective. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I like that. And customer inward, great way to approach everything that we do, I believe. I think I'll add, if you're facing, and I have in a couple of moments in my career where you've got legacy processes, right? That's part of what we all re-engineer and improve, but you've got people who hold on to them, right? And so sometimes you've got to really look at the people's role in this process and where does it need to change? Where do we need to loosen that death grip? Or the process will never get fixed. 100% agree with Neelu that you never throw technology at a bad process. It's not gonna work. But I think sometimes we've got to really pay attention, customer inward, and then what process, what experience do we want? Define your process and understand where people play a role in that process and where they shouldn't. Only then are you going to really be able to do transformative things, and I think that it's super difficult, so you absolutely have to get to the hearts and minds, like Neelu said, of everyone involved in the process, and they've got to really buy in and believe in the why behind the change, or you won't have change. You'll have resistance, it'll be in the trenches where you don't see it, and so really understanding and helping them understand why parts of their job need to be different going forward. And if you can work that, and that's not tech, that's people. And I think that's critical to the influence we need in order to affect that change.
Yeah.
We probably do. Let me bring it over to you. I believe you have a book on this subject. I almost called on you to come up with a question, so please stand up and
Chandra can handle it.
By way of intro, I am Robin's friend. So good to see you, Neelu, Rusty, and everybody here. key question is, emerging technology, doing a pilot is one thing. Operationalizing it at bigger organizations is a different thing. How did you go about operationalizing on the ground? A lot of people talk about bimodal, that and this, but I would like to really hear from you on how did you create these teams who are doing these bot implementations versus keeping the lights on? I know there are challenges, but I would like to really understand from your point of view, again, at a massive scale. Thank you.
So I believe I heard, how do we turn this into how do we operationalize it?
Operationalize this emerging technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to start with some of the foundational pieces, right? When I think about, just our journey as a whole, we start, we talked about this quite a bit, obviously, in the past hour, is security is that foundation. So we looked at IT, our operation from a security perspective first, and then set a strong foundation, not put the organization at risk. And I think about Rapid7's journey, and that it's been a pretty important one. I'm expecting bigger things out of you guys too on your own product to help us with that. So no pressure. But there's a bit of that. But then what I also liked about what I heard, across the panel was, that how do we build in that passion, top and bottom, right? So, I think about that buy-in across the senior leadership team and making sure we got the right talent, the right folks, the right processes being challenged across the organization, so that piece. But then there's also this excitement across the bottom with the rest of the organization that fuels the operational side from my perspective. I mean, and forgive me if I keep taking the technology piece out of it, because I don't think it's just that technologist journey. I'm really, really passionate about that. So when I think operations, I think across the entire organization. And when you have those two key pieces, you've got buy-in at the top, you've got excited coworkers at the bottom, it builds itself, and that foundational piece that allows you to be really successful, because you're taking the guesswork out of it. From security as an example, there's many layers there. I'm picking on security because Rapid7's in the room. But I think that's the way I look at it. I hope I answered your question.
Partly, but I'll stop by.
Okay.
So let me just say that I think we have enough fodder to go on for a follow-on to this. There's a lot here. For example, we haven't even discussed how you put this into your framework, how it changes your culture, and we haven't discussed how your customers are going to, no, we're not going to have any answers to this, Robin. We'll be okay. But how your customers are going to have bots as well, right? Both your consumers and your B2B customers. Any final thoughts before we do wrap this up?
Yeah, I think my final thoughts are, this is no different from everything else you do, right? It's just a shift of new technology that's coming in. As a CIO, I have to hire the right talent, my talent who is ready to take our organization to the next level, right? Which means if I have a talent that is only able to think what's available and is not able to bring in machine learning, AI, I am actually putting sensors in all my ICE machines. When next time you go to Walmart and the racetracks of the world, I have now sensors in my ICE machines that it can actually tell me what is the level of inventory and whatnot. The Internet of Things that's happening, I mean, the power of components that are happening is just incredible, right? Which means we are constantly evolving in our talent base. And it's no different from what a president or a COO, chief operational officer of the organization does. They're constantly looking at the demand shifting. They're constantly looking at the supply chain. They're constantly looking at their preventive maintenance. They are trying to figure out how well they run as a best oiled machine so that they can drive operational excellence, right? That's what on top of mind for COO. It's no different from what I do. Right? I run operations in my organization. I'm dealing with the demand, I'm dealing with the supply, but I'm also anticipating demand. My demand is shifting with IoTs coming in, machine learning coming in, right? The technology need that's coming in, my demand is shifting, and I'm constantly trying to figure out how do I hire more talent? Do I hire human digital component? So I'm constantly evolving, and back to your point, looking at what was my center of excellence before and what do I need to shift to, that's a part of our jobs. So hire the right CISOs, hire the right number twos underneath you, make sure your talent, and enable them to the next skill and move them to the emerging technology. So that's my last 2 cents.
I'll
Excellent.
just add one more point.
Oh, please.
Credibility, right, of whatever solutions we provide. It's got to be credible. In other words, it's got to be secure. The architecture's got to be there, and we got to make sure we don't get too far out over our skis in the things we deploy, because we've got to make sure we know how to handle it, because it will get stretched. We're going to come into situations where we might not have anticipated, or there's going to be a bandwagon to all these people and the energy behind it. So I think one component I will add to operationalizing something is making sure you've got the ability to keep it credible. Yeah. So don't put it, to whether it's a bot, whether it's analytics, whether it's any other system we do, ERP, doesn't matter. That we've got to make sure that we can always control the success of the outcome with this platform.
Couldn't agree more.
Well said.
Excellent. Thank all of you for the questions and for the answers. Sorry, we don't have time right now. And let's get on to the next session. Did you have a final word, Mike? Thank you. Goodbye. See you next time.
Nah, I mean, just an appreciation for all of you being here. I mean, it's pretty awesome that we're all back here together, in person. Couldn't be more excited about it. So thank you guys so much.
Amen. Thank you very much.